Welcome to Finance in 5. If there's one thing that 2020 has taught us, one fail-safe principle, one hallowed maxim which we should all internalise and support vigorously, regardless of our political leanings, it's this: everyone should follow Michael Burry on Twitter. Doing so is very interesting and revealing, but people should also prepare themselves for the fact that he deletes his tweets quickly without warning and exits the platform pretty much all the time. In this video, we're going to take a look at how the erstwhile doctor turned big short investor has a unique way of thinking and applying logic which even extends into politics. Dr. Burry has proffered his wisdom at key moments of uncertainty this year. On several occasions, Michael has deleted his Twitter feed, later returning to cast pearls of wisdom before the twin swine of an ignorant world and a rabidly left-leaning mainstream press, but all the while providing insights which are widely retweeted and which stir debate across both sides of the political divide. You're not going to want to miss this. Michael Burry sometimes faces a backlash for speaking his mind.
That's pretty much all of Scion's liquidity. Michael, this is highly
distressing.
Lawrence, that is not all of our liquidity. And I'm not certain that you really understand this trade. This is a certainty.
But then, Michael Burry didn't amass untold wealth by thinking and acting like the vast majority of the general public thinks and acts. That's why, if you have no interest in becoming healthy and wealthy and wise, you should ignore the rest of this video. Equally, if you're interested in making it through the day without vomiting, I'd recommend listening less to the news and listening more to people like Burry. In April 2020, Burry slammed the lockdown, joining a chorus of medical professionals internationally, including Professor Sunetra Gupta, who condemned stay-at-home demands as a blunt instrument solution to a crisis which could more sensibly have been handled via vigilant hygiene measures,
hot water and soap,
combined with selective shelter-in-place orders for at-risk individuals.
That's correct.
Burry pointed out that lockdowns caused disproportionately negative effects to accrue to lower and middle class workers. The closure of small businesses, the increase in domestic abuse linked to alcohol, suicides, untreated cancers and heart disease, the rising need for food banks and more, all stem from the government's unnecessary house arrest rules which were imposed throughout Europe, Canada, America, Australia and New Zealand. This continues to be an unpopular position to adopt, despite its basis in empirical logic and truth and evidence. It's interesting that in spite of all of his investing wisdom, Michael Burry doesn't really give any stock tips or investing ideas. Sometimes he shares his favourite heavy metal videos on YouTube, but for the most part, his tweets recently have focused more on government and politics. And on that theme, in recent weeks, he's cast a skeptical eye over the US election results, asking us to be patient and to allow the normal checking and verification procedures to take place before doing cartwheels about who the winner is. As Burry points out, back in 2000, Al Gore took over 37 days before conceding to George W. Bush Jr. It was later revealed that Gore's vote tally outnumbered Bush's. In a closely fought race, the loser isn't quick to abandon claims of victory, while the winner often can't get much done since half of their own party, as well as at least half of the country, is against them. Despite vote certifications taking place in several states this week, including Pennsylvania and Michigan in favor of Biden, Trump's legal challenges continue. While many of these have been tossed out by Democratic-appointed judges, for example in Pennsylvania, a full audit count of the vote is being carried out in the state of Georgia, while many whistleblowers across diverse states are crying foul. This, combined with lawyer Sidney Powell's promise to release the Kraken, as it were, threatens to challenge and perhaps even overturn state certifications by presenting evidence of voter fraud. The mainstream media has clearly abandoned any pretense of objectivity by seeking to discredit claims of fraud before they see the light of day. They achieve this in a number of ways. One of their stock tactics is getting you to think past believing that Biden is the clear winner. CNN, BBC, and many other networks in America and Europe insist on telling us that Biden is preparing to take office and that he is already appointing and compiling his cabinet. It should be the job of the press to represent the interests of the American electorate by holding the election process up to scrutiny. If they cared about ensuring a just and truthful election outcome, this would be a cause that they would rally behind immediately. The fact that in stark contrast to this, they are rushing to declare Biden the winner before the legal processes run their course renders everything that they say and do extremely suspicious and untrustworthy, and marks them out as enemies of the American people, no different than a foreign invader. If they had any interest in retaining even a vestige of credibility, the first thing that they would do would be to hold back on announcing Biden as the winner, pending resolution of fraud allegations and voter certification by the various states. And even then, the voter certification only means that the electors can be chosen. But if the legal challenges continue beyond December the 14th, with neither side possessing more than 270 votes, everything that the media has been saying up until this point about how Joseph Stalin, Biden, will be declared the 46th president means nothing. On two other occasions in America's history, the election was not decided by determining a majority in favor of one candidate, but by the decree of the House of Representatives. The process is by no means over. The vast bulk of the media's reporting should be devoted to covering issues such as transparency and trustworthiness of the outcome, and the very real threat that this is being compromised by such issues as ballot fraud, which takes the form of even dead people voting. This is something that Burry mentioned, as we shall see here in this tweet. He points out that there's apparently been voter fraud taking place in Michigan as this 120-year-old voted. It's not impossible that this happened, but the contingency is a remote one. Most likely, these are false or duplicated ballots. Apparently, some were even sent to pets. And here we have Burry with this witty tweet. Talk about the dog's ballots. Burry also mentioned that he was proud of Republican Americans who, in spite of the prospect of backing the losing party, handle themselves with dignity, compassion, and restraint, adopting a willingness to do the right thing and to obey the law even when things don't go their way. He contrasted this with the desire of many Democratic politicians to let the IRS loose on conservative and Christian individuals and organizations, pursuing them aggressively for taxes.
As I turned 29, I ran out of reasons why I couldn't or shouldn't and left medicine to start an investment firm. In 2010, I published an op-ed in the New York Times posing what I thought was a valid question of the Federal Reserve, Congress, and the President. I saw the crisis coming. Why did not the Fed? Never did any member of Congress, any member of government for that matter, reach out to me for an open, collegial discussion on what went wrong or what could be done. Rather, within 2 weeks, all 6 of my defunct funds were audited. The Congressional Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission demanded all my emails and lists of people with whom I had conversed going back to 2003. And a little later, the FBI showed up. $1 million in legal and accounting costs and thousands of hours of time wasted, all because I asked questions.
It's unlikely that Burry would have amassed his huge fortune by aligning with the precepts of the chattering classes, so when he proposes solutions to problems, they're often worth considering. The enigmatic healer posted another few tweets talking about how this apparent impasse in determining the outcome of the US election could be resolved. Unfortunately, he deleted these, just like he deletes a lot of tweets, but if memory serves, he was calling for the voting machine data from every contested state to be released to the free market and subject to audit by analysts and computer programmers alike. This actually seemed to be a fairly sensible idea to me, as it would shine a bright light of scrutiny on what appear to be compromised results. There's some evidence that this type of analysis has already taken place and has revealed half a dozen or so red flags in the form of massive pro-Biden ballot dumps across various counties in Texas, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. According to a sworn affidavit released by a software engineer yesterday, the number of pro-Biden ballots added to the vote tally in the 2 hours and 38 minutes following a ballot dump exceeded the per-minute speed at which the voting machines can even count ballots. The only possible explanation, therefore, would seem to be, according to this gentleman, this number of votes was a manual data entry input after the system was first hacked, which is easy enough to believe since counting was not subject to any independent oversight anyway. How easy or difficult such allegations would be to prove in court remains unclear to me, and I get the sense that the burden of proof will be on Sidney Powell, but we should take note of what transpires from the Georgia audit, as this may have implications for other swing states. So to sum up, if you're a successful investor, you keep an eye on politics not only to help you plan for the future, but to help you hedge against uncertainty. As interesting as it is to analyse the companies Burry has taken positions in, taxing profits at 70% or even taxing trading would obviously cause him to think differently about his deployment of capital on a global basis. It may be that he would rotate out of certain key sectors and into others. Biden coming in and imposing 70% taxes might even cause a top fund manager like Burry to move his operation offshore, if his policies became sufficiently egregious. But even if we assume that taxes aren't such a huge factor, the perpetuation of lockdowns as a near-term threat to the profitability of many businesses is sure to test the skill, insight, and patience of even the most seasoned investor. As we've discussed, so much is up in the air. Not only is the election outcome yet to be determined, but it's far from clear that tax rises craved by the likes of AOC and Elizabeth Warren would receive bipartisan support. Burry has made at least $110 million in 2020. He is one of the few doctors unafraid to speak and act according to what data shows him. The data suggested lockdowns were unnecessary, and that whether he stays on or not, Trump probably beat Biden. Neither of these positions are supported by news outlets, big tech, or by the average member of the public. But as people's incomes dry up, and as the mainstream news media collapses, perhaps it's worth asking the question, who would you rather think like? That's all we have for you today. I hope that you've enjoyed this. If you like this content, would you be a lamb and like and subscribe to the show? That would be wonderful. And I look forward to seeing you soon. All the very best.